explosive is happening in Britain tonight. The fury of millions of citizens has boiled over into a movement too loud to ignore, and its target is not only Parliament, but King Charles himself. A tidal wave of outrage is sweeping across the nation, and at the centre of it is one humiliating demand: dissolve Parliament, call a general election, and do it now. What began as anger on the streets has transformed into a direct challenge to the monarchy. For King Charles, this is not just political noise. This is a humiliation played out on the national stage. The chants are deafening, the banners are rising, and the message is brutal: act or lose everything. And for the first time in decades, the monarchy finds itself trapped in the crossfire of a nation that feels betrayed, abandoned, and desperate for salvation. Across Britain, the fury is reaching a breaking point. Citizens who once turned to Parliament for answers now see nothing but betrayal and corruption. Skyrocketing bills have left families unable to heat their homes or put food on their tables. Migration has surged beyond control, leaving communities struggling to recognise themselves. Public services are collapsing, hospitals overwhelmed, schools underfunded, crime spiralling. For many, daily life has become a constant battle for survival. And yet, when people look to their leaders in Westminster, they see politicians bickering, posturing and bowing to global interest instead of defending their own citizens. The sense of abandonment is unbearable. And so the people have turned their anger toward the one figure who still holds symbolic power above politics, the king. But instead of receiving reassurance, they are met with silence. That silence is no longer seen as patience. It is seen as weakness. It is seen as humiliation. Across social media, on motorways and in city squares, the chants are rising louder than ever before. General election now, dissolve Parliament, do your job. These are not polite requests. They are desperate cries for survival, born out of years of betrayal. To the people, this moment is not about constitutional convention. It is about whether Britain itself can endure the chaos that has consumed it. The humiliation of King Charles is not coming from a foreign adversary or a political rival. It is coming from his own people. The monarchy, once seen as a safeguard in times of crisis, is now painted as spineless, out of touch, and unwilling to act when Britain needs it most. For centuries, the crown has stood as a symbol of loyalty and protection. But now, ordinary Britons are asking a brutal question. What good is a monarch who refuses to defend his people in their darkest hour? The demand for a general election has become more than a political demand. It has become a test of the monarchy's relevance. Protesters accuse Charles of caring more about climate conferences and global applause than the cries of struggling families at home. They accuse him of retreating into silence while the nation collapses around him. Every day he refuses to act. The pressure builds and the perception of humiliation deepens. And this humiliation is unlike anything Britain has seen in living memory. Because once the people lose faith, not only in Parliament, but also in the monarchy, there may be no way back. Britain is standing on the edge of a political earthquake. The humiliation of King Charles is now the spark threatening to set the entire system ablaze. The anger sweeping Britain has grown into something Parliament can no longer contain. For months, frustration bubbled beneath the surface, but now it has erupted into open defiance. Protesters are not just gathering in isolated marches. They are flooding major cities, blocking roads, plastering banners across bridges, and using every platform to send one unrelenting message: general election now. And at the centre of this storm stands King Charles, humiliated by the sheer force of public rage. Once seen as a dignified figure above politics, he now finds himself mocked, criticised, and accused of cowardice for staying silent. Social media has become a battlefield where hashtags calling for the dissolution of Parliament trend daily, while memes and viral videos portray the monarch as powerless and irrelevant. For a man who inherited one of the oldest crowns in the world, this is not only a crisis of authority, it is a public shaming on a scale he never imagined. But what makes this humiliation so devastating is not only the fury of the people, it is the sense that Charles has failed to live up to the very role history has assigned to him. For centuries, the British monarchy has been described as the ultimate safeguard, a last line of defence against political betrayal. In moments of chaos, when Parliament drifted away from the people, the monarch was seen as the anchor that could restore balance. That is why the chants echoing across Britain carry such weight. They are not simply political demands. They are a desperate appeal to tradition itself, an appeal to the one figure believed to stand above the corruption of politics. And yet Charles remains silent. Every day he hesitates, the humiliation deepens, and the belief spreads that he is more concerned with the approval of international elites than with the suffering of his own people. The fury is no longer confined to the streets. Influential commentators and even former establishment figures are beginning to echo the call. Newspapers warn of a monarchy in peril. Broadcasters debate whether the crown has already lost its relevance. Some even whisper the unthinkable. Could this be the beginning of the end for the British monarchy? The pressure is so intense that even supporters of Charles admit privately that his silence has been a disaster. By refusing to address the calls for a general election, he has allowed the humiliation to fester. The public now believes not only that Parliament has betrayed them, but that the King has abandoned them too. That perception is dangerous beyond measure, because when loyalty to both Parliament and the Crown collapses, the entire foundation of Britain begins to shake. What makes this moment so dangerous is the timing. Britain is already spiralling through one crisis after another. Inflation continues to crush households. Public services are stretched to breaking point. Migration has fueled anger in communities that feel unrecognisable. Families feel betrayed by politicians who make promises and then break them with breathtaking speed. And in the middle of all this, Charles has remained a silent spectator. The humiliation is now twofold. The people feel humiliated by their government, and they feel humiliated by a monarch who will not act. The chants of "do your duty" and "fire the traitors" are not just about political anger. They are about a nation's identity, its survival, and whether its institutions can be trusted at all. And so the tension builds. On one side, the people demand action. On the other, Charles retreats into silence. Each day that passes widens the gap between monarch and citizen, and each day the humiliation grows louder, heavier, and more impossible to ignore. Britain is not just demanding a general election, it is demanding a reckoning. And the Crown now finds itself at the centre of that reckoning, battered by the fury of a people who refuse to be silenced. The humiliation of King Charles is no longer just a whisper among discontented citizens. It is a roar echoing through every corner of Britain. The fury is spreading beyond protest rallies and online campaigns. It is embedding itself into the very fabric of daily conversation. In pubs, on buses, in workplaces, ordinary Britons are asking the same piercing question. Why keep a monarch who refuses to act when his people need him most? That question, repeated millions of times, is devastating. It strikes at the very heart of the monarchy's purpose. The Crown has survived centuries because it has always carried the image of strength, duty and loyalty. But today, Charles is seen not as a protector, but as a bystander. One who bows to global praise while turning his back on national suffering. Every silence, every absence, every carefully worded speech about climate or diplomacy deepens the humiliation. It paints a picture of a monarch more interested in being liked abroad, spoiled, than respected at home. The danger here is not abstract, it is immediate and real. Because humiliation, once it takes root, transforms quickly into rejection. Across social media platforms, thousands are now openly declaring the monarchy irrelevant. Commentators are calling Charles spineless. Protesters are chanting "Coward King." Videos of banners reading "General Election Now" and "Charles, do your duty" are going viral, shared not only across Britain, but around the world. International media outlets are seizing on the story, portraying a king under siege by his own people. The humiliation has crossed borders. Britain's royal image, once admired globally as a symbol of stability, is now being mocked as a relic too weak to stand in the storm. For a monarchy built on perception, this is a nightmare unravelling in real time. And still, the calls intensify. Citizens are no longer debating whether Charles can dissolve Parliament. They are demanding that he must. They speak of hidden constitutional powers rarely used in modern times, powers that could reset the nation by forcing new elections. For critics, this would be reckless, even dangerous, but for millions of Britons, it would be salvation. They see it as the only way to restore trust, to sweep away a parliament they call corrupt, and to return power to the people. The humiliation grows sharper every time Charles fails to even acknowledge these cries. It is no longer just about anger at Parliament, it is about betrayal from the crown. And betrayal is something Britons will not forgive. This moment is pushing Britain toward an unprecedented constitutional crisis. On one side lies the fury of ordinary citizens demanding action in the streets, in the media and online. On the other lies the monarch who refuses to step forward, leaving the impression of paralysis and fear. The collision between these two forces cannot be delayed forever. Something must break, and when it does, the consequences will be earth-shaking. If Charles finally acts, he will ignite political chaos in Westminster, but could restore faith in the monarchy. If he refuses, the humiliation may become permanent, cementing his image as the king who abandoned his people in their darkest hour. For now, the silence continues. But silence is no longer neutral. It is an answer in itself. To millions, it says weakness. To millions more, it says betrayal. And as Britain's crises deepen, inflation, crime, migration, collapsing public services, the fury directed at Parliament is increasingly redirected toward the crown. The humiliation is not fading with time. It is escalating, gathering momentum like a storm about to break. And when it does, King Charles will face the most dangerous moment of his reign, the choice between courage and collapse. The storm has now reached a point where even silence is a weapon turned against King Charles. The humiliation is no longer hidden in protests or confined to angry online posts. It has become the centrepiece of Britain's political conversation. Broadcasters speak openly about the monarchy's weakness. Newspapers splash headlines describing a king trapped between duty and fear. Analysts warn that the monarchy itself may not survive if this crisis deepens. For centuries, the crown has endured wars, abdications, and scandals. But rarely has it faced such direct humiliation from its own people. Millions demanding action, millions declaring that their monarch has failed them. Every day, this pressure builds. Charles finds himself dragged further into an unwanted spotlight, and with each day of inaction, the image of a humiliated monarch grows sharper. And yet the people will not relent. They are louder, more determined and more united than Britain has seen in decades. Rallies are swelling with citizens who once remained silent but can no longer ignore the chaos consuming their lives. Pensioners stand beside students, workers beside business owners, chanting the same words. General election now. They do not speak in polite requests. They speak in the language of demand, fury sharpened into a single cry for salvation. This unity terrifies the political class. It exposes a truth they have tried to bury, that the system has collapsed under the weight of its own betrayal. And as that truth spreads, the humiliation of King Charles grows darker still. For he is seen as the one figure who could intervene, yet refuses. Every monarch is tested, but rarely so soon, and rarely so brutally. Queen Elizabeth II was celebrated for her steadiness and her ability to rise above politics. But Charles has walked into a storm unlike anything his mother faced. His reign is not defined by quiet duty, but by a nation in open revolt. The humiliation of being compared to his mother is unavoidable. Where she was steady, he is seen as weak. Where she embodied loyalty, he is accused of betrayal. This contrast cuts deeply into his image, reinforcing the idea that the monarchy is not only faltering, but may already be broken. And the more people speak this truth aloud, the more dangerous it becomes. Because once a monarchy loses the belief of its people, history shows it rarely survives. What is unfolding now is not just a battle over politics, it is a struggle over identity. Britain has always prided itself on its traditions, its institutions, its continuity through turmoil. But today, Those traditions are being shattered by anger. The humiliation of King Charles is symbolic of a deeper fracture. It is the sense that everything once trusted, Parliament, the government, even the Crown, has betrayed the people. And when betrayal replaces loyalty, collapse often follows. Already there are whispers not just of dissolving Parliament, but of abolishing the monarchy itself. Such whispers were once unthinkable. Today, they are being shouted at rallies and debated in newspapers. The king now stands at a cliff's edge. On one side lies action, a bold move to dissolve Parliament and return power to the people. It would shatter convention, outrage politicians, and trigger a storm of constitutional crisis, but it would also prove that the monarchy still has teeth. That the crown is not just a hollow relic, but a living force willing to defend its people. On the other side lies inaction, the path Charles has chosen so far. But that path leads only to deeper humiliation, to silence mistaken for weakness, to loyalty replaced with resentment. If he continues this course, he risks not only his legacy, but the very survival of the monarchy. Britain is holding its breath. The tension is unbearable, the stakes unthinkably high. Will Charles rise to the moment, or will he go down in history as the king who betrayed his people by doing nothing? The humiliation is not yet complete, but with every hour that passes, it grows heavier, more dangerous, and harder to escape. And soon the king will be forced to choose between courage and irrelevance. The nation waits and the fury grows. The final act of this unfolding crisis is now upon Britain. What began as murmurs of frustration has erupted into a nationwide reckoning. King Charles, once expected to usher in a new era of unity and stability, finds himself trapped in the eye of the storm. The humiliation has reached its peak. Citizens are not only questioning his leadership, but the very existence of the monarchy itself. This is not just political turbulence, it is a national awakening. People who once revered the crown as untouchable now march in defiance, carrying signs that read "No more silence, action now, or abolish the crown." The anger is not fleeting, it is persistent, growing, and dangerously organised. The humiliation Charles faces is unlike anything his predecessors endured. It is raw, it is personal, and it is historic. The air in Britain feels charged with something unprecedented. Citizens are no longer waiting for politicians to fix their problems. They are turning their eyes squarely toward the monarchy. They demand a king who will act, not a figurehead who watches from the sidelines. To many, Charles is no longer just a monarch under pressure. He is the very obstacle standing in the way of change. That perception is devastating, for once the crown becomes the symbol of paralysis rather than power, its survival is in grave jeopardy. People are not asking anymore. They are insisting, shouting, demanding that the king dissolve Parliament and restore their voice. The humiliation is now a test of loyalty. Will he serve his people, or will he cling to tradition and allow Britain to crumble? But here lies the most perilous twist of all. If Charles does act, he will plunge Britain into uncharted waters. Dissolving Parliament by royal decree would ignite a political firestorm, tearing open constitutional battles unseen. In modern times, it would shake the foundations of democracy itself, rewriting the balance of power in a single stroke. Yet if he refuses, the humiliation will calcify into something far worse. Betrayal, and betrayal once felt by the people becomes irreversible. They will not forgive, they will not forget. The chance of today could become the revolution of tomorrow. The crown, once untouchable, could fall, not with violence, but with rejection from the very people it was meant to unite. This is the razor's edge upon which King Charles now stands. Every moment of silence deepens suspicion. Every carefully crafted speech that avoids the subject fans the flames of fury. Every refusal to acknowledge the people's cries magnifies his humiliation. The king is cornered and Britain watches with bated breath. The suspense is unbearable because the outcome will shape not only the fate of Parliament, but the destiny of the monarchy itself. The people have spoken and they will not relent. Now the king must decide whether to rise with them or sink beneath the weight of history.